The Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo, Part 1, Shadow and Bone. So, before we begin things here, you guys know I don't do this show alone. I would like to welcome the beautiful and I would like to introduce the beautiful, the talented, the whimsical, the mystical, the magical, the inspirational LB.
Oh, thank you. Inspirational. What a compliment.
Yeah. I had to. I'm. The list is growing more and more. I don't know how we're gonna do this. Yeah.
I love how whimsical is always on there.
Yeah.
That's a good one. It's a good word.
Yeah. It is. It is. So, for new viewers, and fans that don't know how the show works, so LB is gonna give you a little bit of history on Leigh Bardugo, and then we're just gonna jump right into the Grisha trilogy starting with Shadow and Bone. We're talking about we're going to be talking about the book. We're going to be giving our positives and negatives in the way of checkmarks and exes. Then after, we're either going to give this book a novel a thumbs up or a thumbs down. A recommend or not recommend. And from here, I'll pass it over to LB. LB, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, caveman. So Leigh Bardugo. All right. Well, first off, she's Israeli American. She was born in Jerusalem, but she grew up in LA with her grandparents. I kind of tried to do a little bit of sifting on okay, so what happened to her parents? We're not sure. I don't know. That information I couldn't find, and that's okay. You know, sometimes I find when we do bios and that sort of stuff, it feels a little intrusive onto someone's life. I know last time we did the bio, for the last episode that we did on the City of Brass and all that sort of stuff, there wasn't an awful lot to find on the author. Not so for this time round, so it's often to get into a little bit more of it. So, Leigh Bardugo, she was born in Jerusalem, grew up in LA, and she went to Yale for English. She graduated in 1997. And something that I didn't know even existed, she was part of the Wolf's Head Secret Society. Mm-hmm. It's like the third society that was formed in Yale. The secret societies in Yale and other campuses are super weird and interesting.
Yeah.
But it was sort of like a pushback. Anyway, I'm not going to give you a history on Wolf's Head, but she was a part of that society. So there you go. If that's interesting or meaningful for you at all, she's a part of it. So before she started publishing, she worked in copywriting and journalism. So she is a writer. She got her English degree, all that sort of stuff. But what's super interesting, and I thought was kind of cool, was she also worked in makeup and in special effects. So special effects makeup, all the stuff that people are looking at now for Halloween. She was working in that. So I think that's just a really cool jump over from makeup to novel writing. I mean, multi-talented lady you have here. So the book that we're doing today, Shadow and Bone, published in 2012, and it's actually her debut novel. She does have, of course, a collection of essays and short stories in various anthologies. Those are, I wrote down a couple of them. There's a bunch. She's got, where are they? Last Night, a superhero saved my life, a bunch of interesting stuff like that. So she's got a whole bunch of short stories in anthologies, which were published beforehand and continual. But she's been sort of on a publishing spree of novels since Shadow and Bone. So in 2012, she did her first debut novel, which is Shadow and Bone, and that was nominated for the Romantic Times Book Award and the South Carolina Book Award, and it was number 8 on the New York Times bestseller. So really great stuff there. With this book, it set off a lot of other things. So we've got 2013 And 2014, of course, the other two in the series that we have, which is Siege and Storm and Ruin and Rising. And then the duology, which is the Six of Crows and the Crooked Kingdom in 2015 and 2016. And then the last book of the Grishaverse, which is what all of these books in this sort of world are called, was published in 2017, and that's Language of Thorns. And that's actually like a collection of fairy tales and short stories that happen in the Grishaverse. So I'd actually be fairly interested in that because I think it would be pretty cool. But from 2012 to 2017, she was straight publishing novels, on again. And then in 2019, in 2017 as well, she did the first of the DC Icon series, and it's Wonder Woman Warbringer.
Yeah.
For which she won the Inkpot Award. And anyone in comics or whatever knows the Inkpot Award. So that's pretty cool. I thought that was awesome. And then in 2019, a whole bunch of stuff happened. 2019, she published Ninth House, which is her first adult novel. So all of the Grishaverse novels
are YA.
all of the, they're all youth.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you can't read it, guys. Have some fun. Be a kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the adult novel came out in 2019. That won the Goodreads Choice Award and the Best Fantasy Novel Award. And then we get into some interesting stuff with adaptations. So those are all the books that she's made and all the writing that she's done.
Yeah.
Now in 2012, so this is the first.
She's been a busy bee. She's been a busy bee.
She has been a busy bee. From 2012, basically until now, she's been writing and publishing books. Obviously, pandemic happened. Shit hit the fan. But apparently in 2012, she was on a panel for what I'm just about to say, which is her Amazon adaptation of Ninth House.
Yeah.
So there's going to be, or is already made, but I'm pretty sure going to be, a movie made out of Ninth House.
Ooh, we're going to have to review that too. We're going to have to be talking about that too. Yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what Ninth House is about. Obviously, she's really, really hit like a gold mine with this Grishaverse. She's done really, really well with that. And that was made into a Netflix 8-episode series. Now, what's interesting, I know, we don't make the series. We don't need to.
I'm gonna give my thoughts at the end of the show. Because there's like 3 episodes left that me and that guy have to do, but I'm gonna give my thoughts at the end here. So continue.
Okay, that's totally fair. So, 2019 we had Ninth House be published. We had the Amazon adaptation of Ninth House be announced. Obviously, it's not made in a year. And also Netflix released the 8-episode series of Shadow and Bone. Yeah. So what's interesting, I thought, was in 2012, when the novel first debuted, when Shadow and Bone, the first novel of the Grishaverse, debuted, DreamWorks actually bought up the movie rights for it. Ooh. So there was going to be a movie made of Shadow and Bone, but nothing ended up happening with it. So, as you know, in film, in TV and all that sort of stuff, rights get bought and then sometimes they just sit there and never get made. Yeah. So in 2012, the same year that she published the book, obviously it was super popular right off the get-go. DreamWorks bought it up and said, we're going to make a movie. Fast forward, what is that? 7 years? Yeah. Fast forward 7 years and they didn't make the movie. So Netflix bought it up and they made a series, an 8-episode series on it. I haven't watched it. I really don't intend on watching it. I'm more of a book girl. You know this. Yeah. But I thought that was really interesting. 2012, it got published, and 2012, it got bought up the rights for it. And then 2019, she's got Ninth House coming out. And 2019 again, Amazon has bought up the rights to do the movie. Yeah. So clearly, she's on her game with writing. She has definitely hit where she's supposed to be, and she's obviously got a fantastic wide reach. something, two other points about her that are just some more fun facts, I guess, if you want. So she's also a singer in a band.
Ooh.
Her band is Captain Automatic.
I love it. I love it. I love that name.
Right? Very cool. I did look up some songs. I'm not a huge fan, to be honest.
Okay.
It's sort of punk house rock sort of feel. It's not bad. It's not terrible, but it's a good thing that she's figured out writing. It's all I'm going to say on that. Also, something interesting and something that I always, okay, that's going to sound weird. I was going to say always love to see, but that's not what I mean. So she has, I'm probably going to say this wrong, but osteonecrosis.
Yeah, you said that right.
Okay, solid, I got it. So she has osteonecrosis, which essentially means, like, sometimes she needs to use a cane because, like, her bones are dying. But so she sometimes needs to use a cane. You know, she's got this disability, and that has actually inspired one of her characters in one of the books. It's not in one of the books that we're going to review. It's in Six of Crows.
Okay.
So it's the first book of the duology after the trilogy that we're doing.
Yeah.
And he's like a badass, like, boss, mob boss kind of dude. And he also has osteonecrosis.
Yeah.
Or he uses a cane. Something similar. So that's inspired that. So that's really cool. I love seeing representation of all abilities and all peoples in books. So it's great to see an author who has a disability who is using that in their books and who's, like, wildly successful. I love that.
Yeah.
So that is the short and sweet on Leigh Bardugo.
Leigh Bardugo.
Or Leigh Bardugo. I keep on saying Leah in my head.
Yeah,
I don't
know.
Every single time I see it, I'm like, Leah, no, it's Leigh.
Yeah.
Leigh Bardugo.
All right. What's your, let's just jump right into it then. What's your first check mark? Oh, before we do, I remembered to say spoilers ahead. So, make sure to look down, because spoilers are coming. So I just wanted to mention that out.
So if you haven't read the book and you want to read the book and you don't want any spoilers, don't listen anymore.
Also, don't watch the show.
And come back after you've read it.
Yeah.
Like a day.
Don't watch the show and then read the book, because when you watch the show, then read the book, you're going to get really upset. So just read the book.
Okay, yes. So my first check mark is it's Russian inspired.
Yes.
She says it's Tsar punk, which is like 19th century Russian inspired kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just really love that. You know, it's very much a different take from, what we normally see in sci-fi and fantasy, which is generally European centric. And we're just coming off of our City of Brass trilogy, which takes part in Middle East. So it was great, and another really great, refreshing taste of different cultures, a different representation in a novel. So definitely really love that. How about you?
I would agree with that. It has that Russian, Bulgarian feel to it, that flavor, that Lithuanian flavor, and I love that. I instantly got that in the book, and I'm like, that's so fucking cool that we get to go to this, to tackle this kind of thing, because, like you said, it's usually, like, European representation, it's Middle Eastern, it's everything outside of that. And for this, I'm like, I definitely got a Bulgarian Russian feel, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so cool. And it is like the big kefkas, the big kargas, the coats, the boots. I'm like, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved it so much. It was like it was apparent in the landscape.
Yeah.
And something I'm almost 100% certain that you didn't get in your audiobook, but in the book that I got, there was like a little question and answer with the author afterwards that I thought was really cool.
You're right. I didn't get that.
Yeah.
But what I did get, and ha, you thought you were gonna tease me. I'm gonna throw it back at you. I got a preview to the next book in the audio version.
I got a preview to the next book too.
Damn it!
But I didn't read it. I didn't. Did you read it? Did you listen to it?
No.
That's a lie.
Yeah, I did. A little bit did. I did.
I didn't read it because I wanted to save it. I didn't want to get into the next one because, I don't even research the author before I read the book. I just want it to be fresh and clean in my brain, and then I'll write down my notes, and then I'll go and do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of cool to read the question and answer because she was very much aware of that. And something that she said that I thought was kind of beautiful was Russia was like a takeoff.
Yeah.
It wasn't the destination, but it was where they took off in order to create their own world. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's smart. That's smart.
Yeah.
Doing something different.
Not taking place in Russia. It's a completely different world, completely fantasy and all that sort of stuff, but definitely Russian inspired. Love seeing that. Love, it even inspires the little palace. Yeah. And, the city that we have in there, and then the emperor who's adopting all the orphans. I thought it was great. Yeah. That little flavor in there was fantastic. It was really, really good. So what's your first check mark?
My first check mark is the small science. I love it. I love how this works. For those of you that are big Avatar fans, it's kind of like bending. Air bending and stuff, using the environment around you. So it's not magic per se. If you watch the show, you're like, oh, magic. That's not how it actually works. You use the environment around you you enhance the environment around you. For instance, fire, the fire, what are they called? The fire Grishas, you have to actually use matches to make their ability go off because they're just lighting the oxygen on fire.
The Inferni.
The Inferni. The artificers in the world actually have to have the actual thing they're transmuting to do it. They actually have...
Snap of my fingers,
they actually have to use the material around them. So the Sun Summoner has to use the light, the air in the room to use her ability. It's just enhancing those... Actually, no, it's enhancing those particles to make them burn brighter. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah. But I love it. I love making that a practical thing in the book, not just saying, oh, it's fucking magic. No, explaining it in a way that it makes sense. And I'm like, oh, that's why they call it the small science. Because in the fucking show, they just call it the small science and not even go into it.
I see.
And it's not even a thing. But here's the thing. It's kind of a big thing in the book.
I feel like you can have a lot more...
Yeah.
You have a lot of options.
Yeah.
When you're writing it rather than you're doing it in a show. Because if we had that in a show, it would be very much, you'd have to put it in exposition, right? Because in this, she's reading like theory on the small sciences and getting that sort of stuff. It's described to and explained to her. But in a show that, you basically have a scene where it's just exposition, because how else can you tell, like, oh, she's reading a book on this.
Well, here's how you do this. Here's how you do this. So you have a scene with the Inferni, okay? You have a scene with the Inferni, and you just have them throw matches up in the air and have the matches and have somebody and have her, it's like, why are they doing that? And have someone explain, well, it's called the small science because we have to actually use the elements around us. It's not just poof. Yeah. So, but that's something they don't do in the show. But guess what? That's a big thing in the book.
Yeah.
So I love that, though. I love that. Yeah. I love just making it practical for your use, and I love that explanation. It's not complicated. It's not A, B, C, D, E. It's just straightforward and it makes sense and it's just really, really cool. So that would be my first check mark.
That's my second check mark as well.
Oh, you
system.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, we always touch on magic in books if it's present, which generally it is. And I really loved that too. I really liked how, it also part of that was like how it's inherently a part of who you are.
Yeah.
And how that's connected. And, there was this interesting part where it was, I don't remember the word that they used. But they said, this word is for people who don't have that magic.
Oh yeah, it's like nomad. Yeah, it's like muggles.
But there's also there's a secondary meaning that means orphan, and so she's like connecting with that. I thought that was really cool. And what else I thought was cool with that, and something that I think we might see, maybe I'm not too sure, in the second book, is there's this sort of implication that Mao, who's the tracker, he's like the best tracker. He's really got a talent for it. He's got a knack for it.
Yeah.
And it's not something of like, oh, well, the snow is falling this way and blah, blah, blah. He just feels it.
Yeah.
He feels that within him. And so he goes towards that feeling. And that's how it's described in the book with the magics is, yes, you're manipulating these things and you have to understand sort of how it works in order to train and to be better. But initially it's a feeling.
Yeah.
Just a feeling. So I thought that was interesting. I thought how it was kind of cool how she was just like, oh, well, he's got his own magic in this way.
Yeah.
Just because you're not these ordained small sciences doesn't mean that you're not connected to the world in your way.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So I thought that was really cool.
What's your next check mark?
My next check mark. You know what? I'm gonna continue along this sort of line. We're talking about the powers already, so I'll sort of go into this one. So something that I really liked that they talked about. I mean, I don't necessarily like that it was. I don't know. You'll understand. Something that I liked was that when she was like keeping her powers in check, it made her weak. It was like exhausting for her to continually suppress herself.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really great moment in this book, especially because it's young adults. It's for sort of a younger audience. I thought that's a great message to include in there, like not being yourself, not fully accepting and being wholly who you are is exhausting. Mm-hmm. It's really like it's diminishing of yourself. And it was completely, she had this moment of realization. She really had this epiphany. I mean, it's kind of sad how it happened because we know her letters from Mao were being kept and they weren't actually going out, and many letters coming in were being kept from her. So she it's really heartbreaking how that happened. But she separated herself from this man.
Yeah.
And in doing so, she was able to focus in on herself and accept herself and realize, you know what, I've been muting myself. I've been putting myself away just for this person. And yes, relationships are fantastic. Friendships, lovers, what have you, are important and they're great and they're fulfilling. But if it's at the cost of who you are, then it's not worth it. So I thought that was really great because normally in books like this where we have, a young female protagonist, and I'm going to get into this later, but normally when we have that, we have her, fighting back or hiding a part of herself in order to be with someone, and that sort of being an impetus for the story. Mm-hmm. And that sort of got flipped on its head here. It was sort of like she's been holding herself back her entire life. Yeah. And the story really kicks off and really starts. Yes, when she's trying to protect this dude, but she only truly discovers her power and her, her true self and her magic. Yeah. When she's able to let that go. Yeah. And she's able to really be like, okay, well, if I'm not living for this person, then who am I really? And that's when she has this huge epiphany And it's really beautiful. I love that. That's a huge check mark for me personally.
Yeah. My other check mark would be the relationship between Mal and Elisa Starkov. Um, I mean, I have a really I have problems in these YA novels when relationships come up because A, it's so transparent, and B, as the reader, you're like, I don't want this to happen. Like, but here, it happens organically and naturally to the point where you're like, yes, I want this to happen. And
absolutely, yeah,
it's so fucking adorable. It's so adorable.
Right?
I
so
just
cute.
love it. I want to pinch their cheeks. And I'm like, oh, you're so adorable couple. And I mean, I love the relationship. And, you know, when, you know, they were in the wild tracking the stag and Mal went to her and, you know, basically, not basically, he did kiss her. And it wasn't like, ooh, it wasn't sexual or anything. It was just like, yes,
moment, right?
yes, I love that. I did, and the point where, you know, she was all alone in the woods, and he came behind her, and then just said, "Let's go," and I'm like, "Oh yes." It was very adorable. It was like it was yes. And when tragedy struck, it hit me like even harder because how that relationship built up. I felt it more when, you know, the Darkling had that person like, spoiler alert, transmute that collar around her neck. It was just fucking devastating. And then when she spent the last night in the jail cell with him, like going to sleep with their like holding hands, and
it was heartbreaking.
I was like, oh my god. Oh, and I'm like, she gets it. Leigh Bardugo gets it. It wasn't in your face. It was built up. And that's how I like my relationships to be. Build up these characters to the point where
organic.
I want them. I want them just as much as she's gonna give it to me. But it doesn't happen until the ending of the book. And I love that more.
Yeah, because it doesn't really happen until like 3/4 of the way through, right?
As a writer, I would have kind of did the same thing. Did the same thing. Because doing it too early, where do you go? Doing it in the middle doesn't feel like it's the right time. But do it during the end of the book. So it just hits you, and you're like, "Oh my god!" I tell you what. That scene in the skiff in the Shadowfold, just like, no, you son of a bitch, So that's my next check mark.
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna come back to that because I don't necessarily agree. I loved the relationship.
Yeah.
I thought it was lovely. I thought it was very well written. I enjoyed, too, that it wasn't just like, oh, this person has met a stranger and now she's in love.
Yeah.
It was like, no, they've legitimately grown up together. She's kind of always held a flame for him. He kind of broke her heart, but it was like misunderstanding and this other thing. Like, they've gone through this whole journey together. It's not just like, oh, a boy I love.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
But I am going to come back to that later because I do have an X around that sort of stuff. So I'll come back to that later. The next check mark I have, it's a bit of a weird one and it's a quick one. The death of Alexei. Now, Alexei is like Alina's map making buddy, basically. And right at the get-go, we sort of have a little mini, like, it's not a love triangle, but we've got a little bit of a suggestion of one where she's holding a candle for Mal. Mal is clearly being a teenage boy or a young adult boy or whatever. I don't actually think we get ages, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I think it's a good thing to not put them in there because, we're messing around with relationships and that sort of stuff, and there's other stuff that's happening. And there's a relationship with like a 150-year-old man, basically.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of good that we don't.
It's worse.
Whether
It's
or not,
it's worse.
13 or 16 or 18 or whatever.
It's worse in the show. It's much worse because that's more transparent in the show. They had some dude play the Darkling, and the person who's Elena is the Game of Thrones girl. That's one of the
Arya Stark.
Yeah, right. Arya Stark. Not Arya, but the other one. The less popular one. Not Arya, but the less popular one.
Oh my God, what's her name?
The one that nobody liked.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, the one that nobody liked.
Yeah.
And that one.
The actors are like in their early to late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I know that's kind of okay.
Yeah.
They can look young.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my point here about the death of Alexei, we're given this character, and he is built up, obviously not as in-depth as a lot of the other characters, but we're given this emotional attachment to him. It's sort of hinted that Alina is kind of like, oh, well, I can't have Mal. He's a super popular guy. I have my friend Alexei. They're great, and it sort of might be like, this is going to sound weird, but like a little consolation. It's not like I can't have the popular guy, but I can have this guy. And like they clearly have a relationship and they clearly have a friendship going. So there's something there and you're like, okay, well, I see where this is going, blah, blah, blah. And then Alexei dies.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, sorry. But like he dies in that first major incident that happens in the fold. And I thought that was great.
Yeah, me too.
The reason why I'm saying that's great is because sometimes some authors, give me a breath, but sometimes some authors won't kill off characters. Yeah. And as much as we hate it, as much as we cry and are like emotionally sabotaged by a character's death, it's necessary. It's necessary in a plot. If you have all this dangerous stuff happening, if you have them in a war, in an army, you can't just not have people die.
If it makes sense, right? And this is something I get I get criticized like all the time. My friends joke about it, and my bosses joke about it. Like, man, you sure like writing death for these characters? I'm like, if it makes sense. Yes, I'm not a writer that's like, I'm not afraid to kill someone if it serves the story, if it serves the purpose, right? I'll do it. But if it doesn't, then I won't arbitrarily kill a character, and that's why I liked the start of when they went in the Shadowfold. You have to make this thing a threat.
Stakes, right? It actually makes it real. If no one died and it was just like, ooh, that was spooky, trust me, those things are dangerous, we wouldn't believe it. There wouldn't be anything on the line.
Mm-hmm.
She just lost one of her best friends.
Yeah.
Her entire crew is like getting massacred.
Yeah.
And her best friend in the world is being attacked, and that's where this comes out. It heightens the stakes.
Yeah.
Right? So I like that they brought that. I like that it happened soon in the script, and it was sort of like, this is a real dangerous world. This sort of stuff is happening, that sort of thing. And then later on in the book, like way, way, way later, when we meet up with Mal again, he's a changed man, and that's because his two best friends, they died, and they died on his mission. He was one of 3 people to make it back out of like, I think 16 that went over. So they're really depicting a world at war.
Yeah.
Because that happens. Young men die in war. I'm like young men and women, and these things they're written into it. It's not like, oh yes, these trackers that are like doing a very dangerous job, all of our main characters survive.
Yeah.
Because that's how it is. No, like people are actually killed off. There's some tragedy that happens. It's character building. It's very real. Like, well, I won't say it's very real, but it reads properly.
Yeah.
And that's a major check mark for me. So she's not afraid of killing off characters, but she does it well. She's not just like, oh yeah, they died.
Yeah.
There's
See,
purpose to it.
I think when we talk and my friends talk and they talk about like writers like killing off characters and they look at me and they're like, what? I didn't
It's
do
necessary.
Yeah, it is necessary. And, well, I guess because I wrote a written a spec script, Pokemon killing Pikachu, I guess that's what. Spoiler alert! That's what I did.
Well, because everybody loves Pikachu. You can't kill Pikachu.
Well, I did,
No.
so.
Well,
So, anyway, yeah. Go watch the narrative. It makes sense. It makes sense, people, why I did what I did. Alright, so, I guess this is the last check mark for me before we go to our exes.
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, well, we went like, well, how many check marks do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's gonna be my 5th.
Okay.
But if you jog my memory, I'll probably leap on another check mark. But I love the pace of this book. It flows really, really nicely. When we get to these books, and we have,
Yes.
Usually you get a lot of dead spots where you're like, oh my god, just move on. But this book always moves forward. There's no wasted motion in this book. It all flows really nicely.
Absolutely.
It all paces properly, unlike the fucking show. And
clearly you don't like the show, all right? Don't worry. Leave it in the past.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just giving everybody proper context. But I love, like, there's no wasted motion. It's always going forward. It all flows really nicely. It's all paced properly. There's no just dead air in the book, of what I like to call. And for that's going to be like probably my biggest check mark. It's a really good read because it's flows, it's well paced, and that's gonna be probably my final check mark.
Yeah. You know what? I love that. That's one of my last check marks that I have in here is I couldn't put it down. It was really, like, when I say I couldn't put it down, I literally, we were talking about this in the pre-show. I bought it on the Monday and I was done it by the Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I read most of it Tuesday night.
Yeah.
I think I got like a quarter of the way in on Monday, and then I had to put it down because I had other stuff to do. But it's one of those books that lives in your brain, and you need to dive back into it.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense why this is so popular too.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those books that you pick it up and you can't put it down until you're done, and you wanna read everything else that's in there. I held a lot of self-restraint not reading the first couple of pieces from the next book because I didn't want to read them yet. But something that's tied to that as well is the ending is really good.
Yeah, the ending is really, really good. I agree.
And I mean that in a way of not just like the plot and what's happening there. We get a feeling of a continuation of the characters. But it's not done in a way that you feel kind of robbed in a way. Because, like when you set up a book, at the end, it's set up for a sequel.
Yeah.
And it feels like the story that you've read didn't finish.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that with this book. I felt this is a complete, it's I put it here. It's a standalone piece.
Yeah.
It's a complete book. You can read it back to front.
Yeah.
It's a great story. It can stand by itself. I want to know more.
Mm-hmm. And
the story is written in a way such that the characters are continuing to do more, but it's not a cliffhanger. You know, you're not finished the book and you're like, what the fuck? Now I've got to go read the second book to figure out. Like, you're not mad at it finishing.
Yeah.
Whoa. Sorry, there's someone outside ripping past.
What happened there? Whoa, that's like
no, there was a motorcycle that went by that was just like
okay, all right.
It had its throttle like wide open. But yeah, like I really loved the ending of this. I wasn't mad at it for ending. I didn't want it to end, but it was a complete, succinct piece. It was very like the characters had developed quite a lot from the beginning to the end. You know, it was great. I really loved that.
Yeah.
Do you have any other check marks? Because I do, but I want to pass it back to you just in case.
Oh yeah. Okay. I do have one more check mark. I do have one more check mark.
Okay. I have one more.
Okay. So the Little Palace. I sort of like the execution of it. I liked why it was called the Little Palace. And I just liked how it was described in the book. And it was really well laid out. And that's going to be my last check mark.
What did you like about the Little Palace?
How like everything was laid out, like where she went to practice and stuff like that. In the show, it's not really laid out well. It's kind of this thing where Netflix likes to do quick cuts, like 500 million quick cuts in a row. I think episode 4 had, when we went to the Little Palace, had like 18 cuts in the show, and it drove me absolutely nuts. And
montage.
Yeah, no, not montage, but it's if you watch the show, you're gonna know what I mean.
Okay.
It just got me nauseated, and like how everything was laid out properly. Like how, like, you know, she goes and has a training session. It's out back here. I like the what was called where they went to have lunch and supper. How everybody had sections to where they sat. The inferiority sat here. The summoner sat here. I liked that. I liked how everything was laid out per to each other, because that's not well defined in the show.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I think, you know what, sometimes I have a hard time picturing how things are.
Yeah.
In this, I didn't get a full, like, I could follow where they're going.
Yeah.
There was a moment, I think, after like the big ball or whatever, and they like go down the hallway to some other random room. I didn't really follow where they were there, and I was kind of a little confused.
Yeah.
But it wasn't so bad that it took away from it. You know, I wasn't concerned.
Yeah. That's just like a small check mark for me. But that is one of my last check marks. So over to you.
Yeah. My last check mark that I have here is, it's just some side characters. And I think that's sort of a mark of a good author, is when you have some fully fleshed out side characters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because there was a lot of characters in here, because naturally you're going to have that when you're doing this. But we have some characters that we grew some emotional attachment to. But two that I wrote down specifically were the Apparat, who's like the priest-like character.
Yeah.
We don't really see him, to be honest.
No.
He's not really, he doesn't really come about that much. But what I liked that she did with him was she turned that trope on its head.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We have...
Oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
When we see him, right, we think he's evil, right? He think he's like,
exactly.
Or like, oh my god,
like
and then when we go on, you're like, oh, he's not evil. He's trying to help her, and that's really cool.
Yeah,
I
love trying to help her out.
I love when characters are written like that. I love it.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It sort of it subverted that trope. It definitely we were given an expectation, and then it was taken away from us. And
Yeah.
I really liked how that was played in this because we don't see him very often, and he's very much shrugged off as like not helpful or not important. And Alina is creeped out by him and doesn't really, it sort of pushes away.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting to add that in there. And the other side character I have is Baghra, who's sort of like the crone.
Yeah.
In here, and she's the Darkling's mother, as we find out later. I thought that was great. I love characters like that. Personally, they generally tend to be my favorite characters.
Yeah.
When we have sort of grandmotherly, like, doesn't want to deal with anyone's shit attitude kind of thing, witchy type vibes. I love those characters so much, and she was great. And we got to see her be a little vulnerable. So again, we have this like, she was super pushy and mean and grouchy and all this sort of stuff. And then we get this moment with her in the stairwell where she's flustered and she's trying to be helpful, but she's also got this like soft spot for her son still. She's like, I should have done something way back, but I didn't, and this is all I can do now, kind of thing. And the reality, we get this sort of case later where Alina's like, if Baghra was as cutthroat as she makes herself out to be, she would have just killed me.
Yeah.
And that would have actually solved the problem. I mean, it wouldn't have solved it, but it would have taken that away. But she doesn't want to do that. She does have that humanity. So I thought those side characters were really great.
Yeah.
I do have X's about side characters too, though. So
all right.
there's good stuff and there's bad stuff. So
all right. Let's go to the X's then. So we started with you. You started the way rotation here, so we started the check marks. Okay, this may be wrong, but let's I'm gonna start. Okay, I'm gonna start with my X, if that's okay, LB.
Yeah,
I was just a little bit confused who started who with the check marks, but Sylvia, I'm gonna start with my X's. So the Darkling, really cool when he started, and then as he's just as we went along, he started out really cool. And then as we went along, I'm like, oh, he's a mustaching, twisting villain.
Yeah, exactly.
It just made me sad, and I'm like, there's no depth as we get to the later half of the book with the character. He's just evil, and that's it, and searching for power. I mean, I like how he got, I like how he was introduced, but as we went along, I'm like, oh my god, no, oh god. So it didn't take away from the book for me, my enjoyment, but he's a central part in the book, and it just made me, I mean, it made me sad, and I was like disappointed, and I'm like, oh, he's no depth whatsoever. There's no meat to the character. He's the black heretic. Spoiler, he's shadowfold, because he wants more power. And yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, some of the things he does is cool, like he manipulates Alina to the point where she doesn't even know she's getting manipulated, and that's kind of cool. I like that subtlety, and it was subtle. But as we went along, it was just like, ugh. So that's my first X.
Yeah, I have to agree
the
with
Darkling.
you there. It's super frustrating to read a character like that because, I almost saw it coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
And that sort of stuff is just like, she's doing such a great job of subverting things.
Yeah.
I'm hoping My fingers are crossed that we're going to get a little bit more of him in the second book and get a little bit more depth to him. I think there might be something there with how he did manipulate Alina to, like, feel for him or whatever, like, however he did that. But I feel like he was sort of falling for her a little bit. And there were moments where we saw him as more of a human, or more humanity within him. Now, I'm not sure, because it's not obvious in the book, it's not written, if that's just him being manipulative, or if that's actually him and he's just, he's an awful person, but he's falling in love.
Right, I just wanted, like, the Darkling. Oh, they're not gonna have this guy evil, right? Oh, no. And I'm like, oh my god.
No, of course.
Of course. So,
I think it's interesting because he's written as, like, his reputation is awful.
Yeah.
And then we get to know him and he's really not that bad.
Yeah.
And then, oh, wait, no, he's really that bad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it gave a bit of a twist in it, and you kind of need a twist in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was frustrating. I mean, that's kind of my first X that I have here. Is the love triangle that we have is with the Darkling and Mao and Alina, and it's just like you could see it happening.
But it doesn't happen for long, though. It doesn't. I guess that's why I forgave it, because it doesn't happen.
Yeah, like, it's not. I'm not hugely frustrated about it. It's just that it's like, I mean, and I'm going to touch on this later, but it's the cliche, it's that, like, oh, she has her best friend from when she was young, but he doesn't really see her because they've been best friends forever, and she's this scrawny girl or whatever. And then she has these powers thrust upon her, and there's this guy that's new to this world helping her, guide her in this world, and oh my gosh, they fall in love. And now her best friend actually sees her and falls in love with her. Like, it's so cliche.
I mean,
it's
I
so
guess
obviously there, but it's written well.
Yeah.
So, like, I forgive it.
Yeah.
I forgive tropes and I forgive cliches if they're in there and, like, they serve a point, they serve a plot, and the plot doesn't completely revolve around it.
I'm going to kind of disagree with you, because I don't. I think Mel loved her just as much as Elena loved him, but I think they were scared to make the move. That's what I think. What happened?
Yeah.
But
I mean, we do get an aside of, like, there was this, like, summer fair or something like that.
Yeah.
And he, like, I think it's written, like, they were both drunk and, like, he went to kiss her and like nothing else came of it. And that's very much, it's cliche, but it's cliche for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Like, those things happen.
Yeah.
It's it happens in real life.
Yeah.
That's stuff.
Yeah.
I think what forgave it for me, it's an X for me, but it's not a huge one.
Right.
And what forgave it for me was that she becomes self-aware of it. And it's in that moment of her being like, wait, what do you mean you didn't get my letters?
Yeah.
What do you mean you've been writing me letters?
Yeah.
And, like, sort of the clogs turning, and Bagra being like, he's not good, like, he's bad and blah, blah, blah. And then Alina being like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I've just, like, almost, like, had sex with this dude that I only met, like, a couple months ago and barely had any conversation with, and he's fully manipulating my emotions.
Yeah.
Did he say that to just take me away from this? Is that what he's doing? Is there actually something there? And she actually starts to question those things.
Yeah.
So I like that it's like, this young woman gets swept away to this big fancy palace, and she's in this whirlwind romance now, and then she questions it.
Yeah.
I like that we see that, because we don't see that a lot in YA fiction. We do see a lot of, she gets whisked away, and then there's this person, and then he's a bad guy, and oh my gosh, what could I have done? But she actually, examines it. She thinks about it afterwards, and that I like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anyway, that's my point on that. What's your next X?
My next X is, this is kind of, I mean, it's kind of like it's for me. It's a hard X. It's a hard X. I was like thinking about it. This is my last X, by the way. So I was thinking about it in my mind. It's just a really this is an X, but what came of it was really good. So when they got the stag, when they found the stag, okay, and Mel shot the stag, right, and then they all popped up. Like the Darkling and all the people, all the characters, bad, evil people, popped up like out of nowhere. It's like, surprise! I was so confused. So many questions swirling around in my head that I just found that was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
That they were all, shh. And you're telling me that Mel didn't, like, there's multiple times in the book where he doubled back. He looked around. How did they all just pop up and surprise them? It's like, hello. I don't.
I mean, I guess it's
don't understand
because like it snowed, and then she was using her light at night to keep them warm, and it was like,
yeah,
hey,
but
this
you
is
would
super
hear.
obvious, and now we're leaving tracks in the snow, so this isn't good either, and we're kind of way out here, so they're gonna fucking see this. But I agree with you. We had this beautiful moment, and then it's like, and plot device.
No, but like my point is, there's more than one person. They would make noise. You would hear them. You would absolutely hear all these people coming.
Yeah, yeah.
And if the Darkling used his power to hide, you would absolutely see a big dome of darkness. So then you're like, what the fuck? And that's so cartoony to me that I can't, it just took me right out of the book. It took me right out of the book. She didn't explain it well. They're like, surprise, happy birthday. I'm like, what? There's a lot of people. Like, you would see them.
I am so surprised.
You would see them. You would hear them. No, if it's one person, I understand. If it's two people, I understand. But there was like 8 people? Like, more than 8 people. Like, more than 8 people.
There's like the Artificer, there's another person.
There was the Infernate there. There was like, how would you not, like, that's my thing. Like, like thinking about this logically. And I know it's stupid because it's a YA and you shouldn't think logically.
Yeah, it's not logic, right?
But
yeah, I agree with you.
Pulled me right out of the book. And it's a big thing for me. A big, big thing. So, that's gonna be my last, that's gonna be my big X for me. I mean, it might not be a big X for a lot of people, but that is, to me, a big X.
Yeah. So I have something that's sort of related to that.
Okay.
It is my biggest X. And it's the wish from the stag, you know? That, like, if she, because we get this story of like, you know,
it just looks at her. It just looks at her.
Yeah, it's like, if you don't kill it, like if you find it and you don't kill it and like you actively choose not to, then it will grant you a wish.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And like we get this story way earlier in the book and it sets up the precedent for it. And so, you know, if you're someone like me and you're like, it's sort of like it's leading to there. It's like, oh my gosh, she's like racking her brain on a way to break this thing and she's doing all the best that she can. And then she remembers that if this happened, you get a wish.
Yeah.
Now, I have no issue with that being a part of the story. I love it. It's beautiful. It's got a great magic to it. And I think it actually is based in folklore from Russia.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that there was something to do with that there. But what bothers me is that she's essentially enslaved with this like collar from the antlers and everything. And nothing really happens, but she remembers that she has the wish.
Yeah.
It's not like she is like she's visited by these like dreams from
Yeah.
the thing, and like she's trying to figure it out, kind of thing. It's not like she has a dream and is brought back somewhere, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nothing actually happens that she's like, this is me making the wish.
Yeah.
Right? She's not like, it's not like she's breaking the bone or whatever to make the wish. Like it's just she remembers.
Yeah.
And now she's no longer under his control.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so did you wish for the power to be yours? What was the actual wish that you used? Because I think that could be interesting in, you know, the phrasing of it or whatever could be this, and then maybe that's used later on.
Yeah.
So it's never really said, you know, I wish this. There's no like intention there. It's just like, oh, right. There was a wish.
Yeah.
And now I'm no longer in his control. It was so frustrating
Yeah.
to me because like throughout it, I'm like, remember, there's the wish thing.
Yeah, and she went Super
get
Saiyan.
You
It was
didn't
great.
kill it. There was, you know, there was this.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know how you're supposed to activate the wish. Maybe we'll find out. And it was like, oh, she just remembered.
Yeah.
The fuck?
Yeah.
Like, it's so irritating.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating that that's what happens, and it's like she doesn't remember that until like the very end. You don't think she would have thought of that like almost immediately after everything happened?
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Yeah.
You know? It just, that bothered me so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was, yeah. It was,
But-
it was definitely confusing. It's like, oh, I have this Super Saiyan! And then she's like sword, and then she can use the... Okay, I remember another X.
Okay.
You reminded me of my final X. So,
Okay.
this is a little contrite, but it runs off your X. All right?
Mm-hmm.
So we learned in the book, the cut is a weapon that you can use, but you have to train for years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
And then she turns Super Saiyan in the book, and then she can use the cut. She imagines a sword in her hands, and she uses the cut. And everybody's like, the cut! And I'm like, this is the end of the book and whatever.
Okay, I have a theory about this.
I'm like, how can she use the cut? Like, how can she use the cut? Like, it doesn't... But don't get me wrong.
I agree with you. It's frustrating.
Don't get me wrong. That scene was cool, but
Yeah.
how? And like, I get it.
Yeah,
you have
you've
the
already
collar
set up
and
this
stuff like that.
That it's something super difficult.
I get it. You have the collar, and it enhances your abilities, and it's one of the most powerful items of that nature in the book. But people that have that sort of thing, they can't do that yet in the book. So how are you able?
I have a theory.
Okay, go.
I have a theory that the Darkling, like, he does that, and that's kind of like his move or whatever, and it's like, oh, you can't do this because you haven't trained it.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. I have a theory that it's one of those things that isn't taught. And because the Darkling wants to keep this power over people.
Yeah.
So they don't learn it. It's not that it's not necessarily all that difficult. It's not something that you couldn't potentially learn and do, not necessarily easily, but it's something that's not as wholly out of reach as he's making it seem, you know? Because we have this come up time and time again with the Darkling, is that he feeds her false information, right? He tells her he's not getting letters or whatever to this thing. He tells her, you know, he tells her that, you know, he thinks that this herd is real. And as soon as she brings up, you know, this wish thing and you don't have to kill it, blah, 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 he's like, no. Like, all that's true, but not the wish thing. Right? It's like, okay.
I would agree with that. However, we see in that skiff, everybody's like, oh, she used the cut!
Yeah, they're all shocked, right?
Yeah, so it's a small X. But I wanted to mention it because of what you were saying. I'm like, it was cool, but it doesn't it doesn't quite fit, but I'll minorly allow it because that
No, I'll allow it.
I'll allow it. So yeah, that would be
Yeah.
my final X.
Yeah, I do have two other ones.
All
I
right.
can sort of
Yep.
mush them together.
Yeah. Sure.
So I did mention, these side characters. I'd like to know more about who was it, Zoya, who comes up, or Zoya, who comes up sort of at the beginning of the book. She's the one that's the oh my gosh, what's it called?
The Heartrender?
No, she's not a Heartrender. She's a squalor.
A squalor?
She's a squalor, and she's like yeah, she's.
Oh yeah,
she's
the
one-
rude girl.
she-
Yeah.
she comes back halfway. Yeah, the rude girl. So she seems to be like a major role in this, but we don't actually see, like, we don't get her backstory. We don't really get a lot of information about her, and it feels sort of empty. Like, she's placed in there so that she can have a bit of a rival, so we can have that sort of energy
Yeah.
in there. But we don't get an awful lot. Like, what happened to her? What was that conversation? Do we see her, like, she backs off of Alina afterwards. I would have liked to see, like, maybe her sitting out by the water and being upset, or something. Like, I would have liked to hear a little bit more of a backstory.
Yeah.
Also with Ivan, who's he's a Heartrender, and we have Ivan and we have Foggia, I think, or something.
Yeah.
The two guards. I would have liked to know a little bit more about them. I would have also liked to know more about, like, the enemies of Ravka. We've got, like, I think we had 3 separate countries or something like
Yeah.
that are enemies of Ravka. We don't really hear an awful lot about them. Ravka is very insular, and then we get some information about them, enough to be like, there's other people out there.
Yes.
It's not just these people that are on the continent. There's enemies. There's a war happening.
Yes.
I would have liked to see more of them. However, I will say, the story carries well enough
Mm-hmm.
that it's not really necessary.
Yeah.
It may have felt a little overdrawn if we had included those things in there.
Yeah.
And more than likely, we're going to get more of that information in the second and third book.
Yeah.
So I'm not crazy about it. I'm not like, it's not a huge X for me. I would have liked to see a little bit more, but I think they gave us just enough to provide that sort of story basis. Maybe, who knows, maybe it was included in the original version and it was just too long with them, so they cut that and they're including it in the second and third, because I feel like this next book, we're already out of Ravka, we're on the sea, we're going to see more of that sort of stuff. I feel like this second book is going to be more of an exploratory kind of vagabond kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we'll probably get to hear more of those stories. So a little bit of an X, but not too worried. And the absolute last thing I had, I know I kind of talked about it already, but it's really bugging me. Just the cliche of Alina as a character in and of herself. She's an orphan. She's a scrawny girl. Her love interest is best friend. She's got these unknown powers, and she discovers them after a traumatic event, and then she's whisked away. Like, it's so cliche. She's written well.
Yeah.
The book is written well. It reads really well. I really enjoyed it, but it's really cliche. Like, you can say, like, oh, this mysterious orphan from wherever discovers her powers after a traumatic event. Almost
Yeah,
kills her
it's
best
yeah.
friend.
Doesn't it?
You
I
know,
mean,
like,
yeah. You're right.
It's the description of a lot of leads in these books.
Yeah.
I'm not mad about it. I'm happy to have, young girls having characters to look up to and see themselves in. There's a reason why we have this as a trope. I mean, like, it's a trope across a lot of books. So if I take umbrage with that, I'm taking umbrage against a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
It irritated me because it was so much like, oh, okay, yes, and she has powers. I'm so surprised. Like, you know. But that's all of my exes. That's like the major two that I had for exes was that cliche and just the wish thing with the stag.
I will counter. I will counter
Okay.
that with she has powers, but it's not per se a thing that is outside of defeating the fold. Very useful. I would say she just like makes light
But yeah,
brighter.
that goes into like the chosen one trope.
But
though, you know, like you're the only one that exists that has this power to keep back the evil from the world.
But it's,
you know, like
it's
come on.
it's a power that just summons light. That's it. It's not like a very useful power outside of that. It's she has this power. She is chosen. I will agree, but I will counter and to say it's a power that's outside of defeating the fold. Not very useful at all.
Yeah, I mean, look, although I will say, okay, whenever you're in a video game and it's like you're adventuring or you're going somewhere or whatever, what do you need? You need light.
Yeah, but it's not like
if you're out of matches, you're kind of screwed.
It's not like a incredibly, oh my god, she's super powerful thing. She's like, I can summon light to defeat darkness. That's it. And I can cut people. Maybe sometimes.
Yeah.
And
I mean, she does get warmth from it though. It's
sunlight,
but
it's
right?
not like it's not like, you know, I would, like, I'm reading this, yeah, she's powerful, and yes, she's a sun summoner, but what can she do outside of that? Like, most other abilities, like the Heartrenders and the Infernates, have other things they can do with her. It's just summon light, and I can cut you. Sometimes, maybe.
Yeah. No, I agree. It is a bit of a
so I like I like that. Like, yes, it is a trope. I will agree with you, but it's the Sun Summoner ability is an ability that on the outside looking
it's not
in,
like all powerful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah,
she can't incinerate you.
It's not like a broken.
Yeah.
Not like a broken section of the magic.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so what will you give it?
Thumbs up, thumbs down?
No, you first. Thumbs up,
Me
thumbs
first?
down. Yeah.
It's a thumbs up for me. It's definitely a thumbs up for me. There are some minor plot points that are frustrating, but overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I cannot wait to get into the second book. I have to work tomorrow morning, otherwise I'd probably be up all night tonight reading this.
Oh yeah, you're doing a thing. I forgot. You're doing a thing. You're like you're gonna be in the next Oscar movie. You're gonna get the next Oscar.
Tomorrow is like my gardening work. Tomorrow is my my Joe job.
Okay.
But this Sunday I have acting work. And,
Ooh.
Yeah, no, I'm trying. I'm working on it. I'm doing stuff. Anyway,
you're gonna get an Oscar. I believe it. I feel it. So anyway,
thank you. I appreciate that.
I am. I'm going to give this a thumbs down. Psych! I'm giving this a thumbs up. I'm giving this a thumbs up. I totally recommend this. This is an awesome read. It flows really nicely. It reads really nicely. Do not watch the show. Read the book.
I mean, that's true of basically everything.
No,
right?
it's especially true in this case, because it's called Shadow and Bone. It's referencing the Shadowfold, and the bone is the collar. In the show, that's not the thing. So, yeah. The biggest thing that makes the book is not even a part of the show. Like the small science, it's only referenced once.
If it is of any recompense to you, the Ninth House Amazon adaptation, Leigh Bardugo is a co-producer on.
On who? Shadow and Bone?
On no, on the Ninth House, on the next one that's coming out.
Yeah.
So I don't think she was a co-producer. I thought she was, but you say she's not. So
no, she's not.
On the Netflix.
Yeah.
But on the Ninth House, she is a co-producer, and maybe that's because of what happened with the Netflix.
Normally, I would see. It's hard to bring writers, like authors of novels, because they're not script writers, and that's a very different form than being an author, right? So,
although she's not writing the script. She's a producer.
So,
which means that she'll have some sway over what happens, but she won't be writing it. And you know what? I have a feeling that she's familiar with the industry because she's in makeup and special effects before she even started writing. Yeah,
that's right.
So I feel like she kind of has
Amazon would do that better, though.
Of insider knowledge based on that.
Yeah, I feel like Amazon would do that better than Netflix. Because Netflix is very much quality instead of quantity. Quantity instead of quality. And Amazon, it feels like they believe in quality instead of quantity. So I feel like that's going to be the Ninth House is going to be better on Amazon than it would be on Netflix because Netflix likes to do different things, and they don't believe in quality. Wake up, people. It is what it is. You get upset at me all the time when I say that, but I'm not wrong. All right. Yeah. So, I totally recommend it.
Big thumbs up.
Yeah, big thumbs up. Yeah. And I totally dig it, and I totally love it. So, anything before we get the outro here?
We'll see you next time we turn the page.
Yeah. I forgot. I always forget.
You didn't forget. I remembered.
God. Yeah, okay, everyone, don't go away. I have to get the outro. We have to get the outro. Don't go away. The show's not almost over. I'll be back. Alright, guys, hold on. The outro's coming up. So, everyone, the outro's not going. That is beautiful. So, guys, we will see you all next time. I believe the next time I will see you is tomorrow for a brand new episode of Spotlight Cinema or Final Countdown Top 10 Pixar Movies. Either one. I'm sure my agent will let me know. And, until then, guys, until we see each other again, my friends, take care, be safe, be well, and I love you guys. 90,000. Peace.